how many people we have here tonight. This office has grown from 35 people in 2008 to 60 people in 2011 to over 90 people this year just in the Horsham office. And a big thanks to all our regional people for making the trip and joining us tonight. I was going to start out this evening with talking about our dear friend and colleague, Robert Hurd, who many of you know or don't know, but you've seen the announcement this week that he was killed tragically in a car accident while working for PRA in San Diego. Unfortunately, we've had an equally tragic event that hits us close to home this evening. Karen Pipanowski's husband was killed in a car accident just a few hours ago. And I'm very sorry that I have to be the one to deliver this news, but I know that many of you know Karen. I know a lot of you know Matt, and our hearts go out to them. I have to be honest with you, I've known Karen for years. I brought her here to PRA from our previous company, and many of us have worked together, tried and true, for a long time. I'm at a loss for words. I know that as you listen to the rest of my talk about Robert, you'll see what kind of company you work for and how people pull together. And I would ask that each and every one of you be there for Karen, not just in the next week, but going forward, because it's going to be really, really difficult for her. And she's a close member of our PRA family. So here's to Matt, and who's a close friend of my husband and I's. And I hope they can get through this really difficult time. So we'd be remiss tonight as we embarked on celebrating 2011 and having our holiday party, if we didn't take a few minutes to reflect on the life of one of our colleagues here at PRA and a dear friend who's Robert Hurd. It's twice now I've had the privilege of honoring Robert. Just 2 weeks ago at the sales meeting, he was given a very special recognition award by Colin and I for his outstanding contributions at PRA, many of which you'll hear about tonight. I really wish I could get another hug like the one I got on the stage from him that night. But tonight I have the honor to pay tribute to his legacy, not just as an employee at PRA, but as the amazing person that he was. He was an outstanding individual, and if you interacted with him just once, you remembered it because he had an ability to connect with people almost immediately. We've received hundreds of emails and phone calls from those who work with Robert at PRA, as well as clients and friends outside of PRA that he worked with. And I'd like to share some of those with you now. I'd like to give you my story about Robert first. When I started at PRA 3.5 years ago, my second day on the job was an all VP and above leadership meeting adjoined to a one-day sales meeting. Talk about baptism by fire. I did have some security in that I worked with Colin, Linda, Kent, Susan, and a few others in my previous job, but nonetheless, it was a really overwhelming way to start. On the second night at a dinner at Terry Beaker's house, Robert walked up to me and asked me how I was doing since I joined PRA. He knew a fair amount about me, considering I'd been there for 2 days, and just offered to help me in the transition in any way that he could. We then went on to talk about the work-life balance, what's important in life, the struggles that we all face, me particularly being a mother, a wife, an executive, and constantly wondering if you're doing the right things, making the right choices. Robert really cared and really listened, and from that point forward, we developed a bond and promised to check in on each other. And we did. We were trying to make sure we stayed in balance. He provided a sense of security to me in those first few days at PRA that I really needed. I continued to enjoy every interaction I had with him, always look forward to an opportunity to see him, to talk to him, to be at his table for dinner, or to work on a project with him. My only regret today is I didn't get enough time with him, just like many others will say tonight. Now I want to share some of the sentiments of our colleagues and our clients. For those of you that know Michael Kirkengast and therapeutic expertise, this is what he wrote to me. You will appreciate that it's very difficult for me to pick anything of the memories I have of Robert, but but would want to remind you not to forget the impact he had on the Purdue and the Ardea relationships. Without his clear insights and beautiful and patient ways of dealing with all the necessities and emergencies of those programs, we would surely not be where they are today. I'm sure many of you have worked on those programs. On a personal note, let me say, with Robert, PRA lost one of his most gifted and talented employees, and I lost a friend. I will miss our many conversations, scientific and business-related discussions, and most of all, the fun we had together. The next note is from Philippa Whitelaw, who's one of our DPDs. Robert spent a lot of his professional career working at Amgen and developing the company from a small to a large biotech company. He moved from the UK to the West Coast while working for Amgen before he worked at PRA. So when we went to the Amgen bid defense for biosimilars, which was a full-day bid defense, it was like he was coming home. He knew everyone at Amgen because he'd worked so closely with them. He was the first to speak at the bid defense, and he stood up very proudly in front of 40 people and introduced himself as Robert Hurd, Vice President of Biosimilars at Amgen, rather than PRA. Since he had such an excellent history and relationship with everyone in the room, the whole room burst out laughing, which relaxed everyone and bonded the room for the duration of the meeting. Philip was sure that this meeting and the way he started it helped to completely wow them with the presentation, which got us selected, and we're now forging towards executing an MSA with the largest biotech company in the world for their biosimilars development. It's a tremendous, tremendous asset that he left us with. Robert was exceedingly sensitive and considerate of how people were perceived, what he was saying, and what was happening around him. His intellect and his energy for work, concepts, and human nostalgia was overall fun and considerable. I feel very fortunate to have known and worked with such a special person, and my heart goes out to his family and those that knew and loved him for a long time. So we've talked about the impact that he had on Purdue and Ardea from a PRA's perspective, but I think it's important to share with you what the executives at Purdue and Ardea said this week when they found out the news. Kimberly Maynard, the Senior Vice President of Regulatory Development at Ardea, it's devastating news. We all have tremendous respect and appreciation for him as a scientist, a leader, and a person. The CMO, David Haggerty, a nicer man you couldn't meet. So smart and so engaging. Nancy Haverla, who is our JSC chair. We've all grown so close and fond of Robert. How will anyone fill his shoes? We need him. Purdue, such a sad loss. My heart goes out to his family. I know his children were the world to him, and I can't imagine what they must be going through. My condolences to all of you. Such terrible news. Verbal and email notes from Bill Mallon, their VP of Outsourcing, Craig Landau, their Chief Medical Officer, and Mitch Katz, their Executive Director of Operations, included. He was such a trooper. He always maintained a sense of humor. He was a great ambassador for PRA. He was the consummate professional, and he had unquestionable integrity. He was a realist, he was not afraid of delivering a tough message, and he was solution-oriented. Now on to some really heartfelt tributes from some of our other colleagues. This is from Sarah Davis. I'm sitting in front of my office chair and smiling for the first time since the news broke of Robert Hurd's death. I can hear his voicemail now. In his best English accent, "You come through to Robert Hurd." I always smiled when I heard that voicemail, as it was one of a kind, just like Robert. In his time at PRA, Robert had many roles and official titles, from General Partner to Vice President of Scientific Affairs to Vice President of Biosimilars Development. But his title in no way defined or limited what he did for this organization. The bottom line was Robert always did what he needed to be done, regardless of his title, his defined role, and he did it with an energy and a charisma that was undeniable. But it's not what he just did professionally that set Robert apart from the rest. It was the care he took with people personally. I have fond memories of Robert asking me, again with his English accent, "How are you today?" I would provide the standard answer and reply, "I'm doing fine." Robert would grab my arm and further reply, "No, Sarah, how are you really doing today?" The difference was he really wanted to know. He truly cared about the people, and he took time out of his day to be there for people. I started this tribute with a smile, but now the tears are once again welling up in my eyes, and all I can say, thank you, Robert Hurd, for coming through to me. You were dearly missed. I'm going to share a few excerpts from Kent Tolke's entry on Robert's memorial blog on our Inside PRA website. As many of you may know, Kent was extremely close to Robert and attended his wedding. I'm still in a state of disbelief. It's hard for me to imagine a world without Robert Hurd. Robert took a sincere interest in everyone he met. He took the time to listen and learn about the people in his life, and he remembered everything. Once he knew the things that were important to you, he never missed the chance to reach out and share his thoughts. He never let a special moment pass without making sure that he remembered it and reached out to you. He was a kind and gentle soul. He was simply put as one of the nicest men you would ever meet. As a colleague, he was equally thoughtful. In all the years I worked with Robert, I can never imagine him saying no to any request or complaining about anything. He always had a simple response: how can I help? And he did just that. He had a unique ability to take the most contentious discussions and almost immediately disarm the situation, bringing everyone to a calm and reasonable solution. Not a moment has passed in the last few days that Robert has not been in my thoughts, so desperate for closure, so desperate to just have one more chance to say goodbye. The imprint that Robert made on everyone, he will certainly endure. We were asked by the San Diego and Seattle news stations for a statement from PRA for the news, and this is what Colin Shannon, our CEO, provided to the news. We were extremely saddened at the loss of Robert Hurd, Vice President of PRA. Robert was smart, professional, and dedicated, but most importantly was a fabulous person to work with. Since the news of Robert's death, we have received numerous tributes, not only from colleagues, but from many clients he interacted with. Robert was a very modest person and would be completely overwhelmed at the graciousness and generosity of the people he has touched. He would have been so proud. In this tragic time, our thoughts are with all of his family and loved ones. Today, we not only lost a father, a husband, a colleague, and a great friend, but also a simply fantastic person. What a tragic loss to the drug development community. We're recording this presentation tonight so that Robert's wife, Amy, and his children, Sam, Stephanie, and Addie, can see this and get some idea of how much Robert has touched so many of us through his work at PRA. Amy, Sam, Stephanie, and Addie, our thoughts are with you tonight, and we grieve with you and for you. Lastly, even in his death, Robert continues to teach us life lessons. We work in a market environment that's highly competitive for talented clinical research personnel, such as all of us. We get calls every day and offers to move elsewhere for a few more dollars or a free iPad. It's often said that tragedy and adversity does not build character, it reveals it. What I have witnessed over the past week is a company filled with people that has come together to do all the right things. This is something I personally never take for granted. There have been people working late into the night, starting early the next morning, and doing whatever it takes. People like Kent Tolke and I get the privilege of standing up here to talk about Robert to a group like this. But there's people working tirelessly behind the scenes that have made all the difference. People like David Shin in facilities, working with the insurance companies and the officials in San Diego, and with Amy to ensure that Robert's family gets the proper closure that they deserve. Kathy Baca in Human Resources, working tirelessly to maximize the benefits for Robert's family. Or Roger Boone on my team, who scrambled all week to ensure that the Inside PRA website, the blog, and the press statements were created and met the quality needed to appropriately honor Robert's memory. These people and many others are certainly motivated by their affection for Robert, but they're also motivated to simply do what's right. These are the kind of people that we work with at PRA. These are such critical factors when you think about the kind of company that you want to work for and what you might be trading for a few extra dollars. along with the many other things that I've learned this week and that I've been reminded of, not the least of which, that I don't want to work anywhere but at PRA. And I'm very proud to be an executive of this company. So thank you to Robert for all you've done and you've meant to us, and we miss you already. So before I do the corporate update, can we raise our glass and toast to Robert for his life?